Hey all, how's it going? Enjoying the show so far? Yeah. Everyone's like, yes. Well, we've got no real agenda planned for this part of the fest, but we're just going to have hopefully a casual chat about what's happened, what's happening, and what's going to happen on Speak Network. And really, I want to give the stage to these three really talented devs here. We're really lucky to have them, and their work is showcased by some of the amazing work that's being done on Speak Network. So Dan and I will chat a little bit, and we'll try and bring these guys in and get their takes on what's been done and what's happening. So, I mean, for me, I'd like to give a round of applause to these guys, just because they're really talented guys. So does anyone have a specific thing they want to start on, or should we start on how this all started?
Yeah, start from the beginning.
Yeah, sure.
Start from the beginning. So I guess 4 years ago, we were sick of censorship and we started building 3Speak, which is a whirlwind of a story on its own, and we won't touch too much on 3Speak here, but 3Speak is a video app that is now pretty much starting to decentralize. As far as I can tell, it's the only decentralized video app in the world because of some of the work that these guys have done on Speak Network. And then Dan kind of popped up and he was like, this looks really interesting, can I get involved? And we just kind of clicked straight away, and we just, within 2 weeks, we were on board together, and that kind of carried on. And we both saw eye to eye on a lot, I think, right, Dan? I mean, in terms of building ourselves out of the video infrastructure operation?
Yeah, we had a clear mission from day one, just about getting to the final product.
For sure. And so we were always focused on how to build ourselves out, but it was kind of impossible, and the team that we had around us at the time were more focused on building a centralized video platform. And over time, it's very obvious that when you're running video infrastructure, it's heavy, it's hardcore. You've got three main elements. There's content delivery, so you've got to deliver the content to the viewers, and that's a server on its own. Then there's content storage. You've got to store the content somewhere. And then there's encoding, so you've got to encode the content before it goes into the system to make sure you've got a standardized set of video formats to deliver to the users. Well, those are three hardcore pieces of infrastructure that need to be operated, and they're three central points of failure that you guys, as the community using this software, rely on us to keep up and running. It also puts a lot of pressure on us as a video app that's trying to run a censorship-resistant system, right? So we've always been thinking of ways and looking at ways to get rid of ourselves from the operation of that and let the community run it on our behalf or voluntarily for us. So COVID happened, and Dan was like, come stay at my place. Mexico's okay. And they were locking us down in the UK, and so I said, okay, I'll come over to Mexico. And it was the first time we met, and we spent a month together. I was living at Dan's place for a month, and we were just like, like you are at HiveFest when you first come and you meet a new Hivean and you haven't spoken about Hive for ages, and you're like, blah, 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 blah. We basically did that for a month straight. And we started talking about how do we get out of, how do we build something where we can get out of the system. And we did a lot of research into existing systems and what's already out there. And it's really interesting because I feel like Dan, in my opinion, is a certain level of genius, right? He might not say it himself, but he's got his way of explaining things. He gets into the weeds on things. And then I'm like a bit more rigid and structured. And so we did this together, and we kind of birthed this idea of incentivizing infrastructure using Hive and building this incentivization system. We did a lot of research on it. We wrote a paper. It was like a year's worth of work in a month, it felt like. And then we kind of birthed the idea of this Speak Network. Not that we're the technical people to build it, but we built the principles around what it was in that month. And there we are. I guess that's the story up to that part of you.
Yeah, basically, I'd throw up a bunch of stuff and he'd structure it, make it make sense, and then we'd run it by a developer, because we're not developers at all. We sort of said, okay, this is the end goal. This is what we need. And it's taken me a very long time to understand the Hive tech stack, how this stuff works. And I'm not claiming to even be an expert in it. But through the obsession, you start to learn how these things work. You need a transaction layer that isn't prohibited by fees. You need a place to store long-form text. Once you get to the point where you need to store bigger things than text, like video, data of various kinds, you need to incentivize it. It needs to go off-chain. You can't store these things on-chain. So you start to look at what a blockchain really is, and it's just a record of truth of immutable transactions that you can store data on, text-based data, and reference that off-chain. So it's all these things started to click because we weren't VC funded. We're like, okay, how do we make this thing scale? How do we do it in the most efficient way possible? I'm not saying it's the only way, but these things sort of connect like blocks, and there's sort of ways you have to do them. And it's like, okay, well, we need to incentivize, because we've technically been the most decentralized video site for years and years because it's on IPFS. You can download the videos, you can run your own node, but very few people did because there were not incentives. The moment we added incentives, you get over 60 nodes worldwide. We had over 5 to 6 terabytes of data, decentralized data from people storing on their excess hard drives. And you see what just a little bit of incentives, you add social status, you add the ability to build communities on top of this where the communities can incentivize their infrastructure. And these are things you have to think about. You can't just say, oh, we want decentralized off-chain storage, just like, as you said, CDN, storage, encoding. You have to think of every single pillar, and you can't just say, oh, well, we'll rely on AWS for that. It's like, no, we need to build this tech stack where we, from the ground up, can control every ounce of it, and then from there you can actually build a proper community. So, and that's of course where we need some help from some wizards, some magic coders that are sitting to my left.
And I remember when you first approached me on this, and you described it as a backup system. And it's like, all right, well, I want to back up all the 3Speak videos, and then we start talking and talking and talking, and then it turns into this whole thing.
It grew arms and legs for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
But this is what was really cool about this. We kind of stumbled, because finding good devs is almost impossible, you know? And like these guys have kind of stumbled into the project by accident in some way. And it's just been really a pleasure to like see this kind of unfold without us really. It's almost serendipitous the way like Vaultek came in first, and he's already into the video side of building things, and he's interested in this, and then we get talking, and it becomes like Vaultek's like, yeah, I want to build this. And do you remember that period at all, and what happened?
Well, I just remember like 4-hour-long meetings us
Yeah.
talking about the whole thing, and
We've talked about this a lot.
yeah, and then I think we started building the desktop app was the first thing that we worked on as kind of the proof of concept, and integrating that with was centralized site at the time. Yeah. And then doing all of that integration work, and then we were testing the desktop app for a little while, and then around, I think it was early 2021, we actually released it or so, or at least made it public. And then shortly after that, the proposal and all of the other things that we did actually launch it.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of a testament to the way we think. I think the desktop app is built because it runs locally on your computer, so it can run independently of 3Speak. And if we disappear or we get shut down, the desktop app is still a window into the blockchain, and we can't affect that. Once it's on your desktop, it's called the desktop app. It's there, and it's a window into the blockchain, and it's yours. You know, it's like running a Google Chrome browser, except it's for videos, and it's pulling videos from the chain to your front end, independently of us. Which means basically, if our web app, the URL-based web app, if that gets shut down, you'll still be able to use the desktop app, right? And that was of critical importance to us to get up and running straight away, so that this thing lives on, even if we all disappear for whatever reason, you know. And so Vaultek really focused on building that initially, and that kind of drew the line in the sand. And because once you have these things out there, you're also protecting yourself a lot, I feel, because if we're still running centralized infrastructure, the team becomes targets in some ways to, you know, whatever it is that the system wants to bring. But once you build yourself out of things, you kind of lower the value on your head in some ways. And so that desktop app really did that for us, I think. So what was next after that? Proposal. I mean, the proposal, we worked on the proposal for about 9 months. It was a long process. I mean, I don't know if you guys want to talk about this. I know you two weren't involved at the time, but Voltec and Dan were.
Well, I just think it's really cool because people will ask, well, how do you create a decentralized system? I was like, well, you don't. You create a tech stack that is efficient, that can promote censorship resistance, and then you hope volunteers show up. Anybody saying I can create censorship resistance, it's an oxymoron. So we look to censorship resistance that's out there on Hive, and we say, well, let's just do a pure drop, no pre-mine, no keeping tokens for ourselves, nothing like that. We want this to be Hive, an extension of Hive. And you really see the power of that because instead of trying to create fire from scratch, you can easily throw another log on an already existing fire, and Hive is the existing fire, so we can easily spread. And we saw that the effort, the ease of starting a new network and creating the censorship resistance, when you have the synergy, when you have all the common goals and people say, yes, this makes sense, we do need a censorship resistant way to incentivize off-chain data, that's going to be very important, we need to look to incentivize infrastructure and all this stuff. So the community was on the same page. We didn't need to sell our souls for VC funding. We did a lot of stuff, not getting paid, but the critical part was to prove that, hey, if you provide value to a community, there is a way to raise funds without a VC to create radical new technology that applies freedom. It promotes freedom instead of the opposite of what VCs do. So it's a magical story to me to see that. And I'm not saying it is a success yet. I consider that we've come a long way. There's still more to go, but you can see it coming to life. You can see people running the infrastructure, how it's going to work, how it's going to get more efficient. So it's just really amazing to me that you can come here and build freedom tools and not have to sell your soul. You can get community funding. You can make a name for yourself, and you can extend this protocol in the right way, the voluntary way. Because we're not doing this for money. We're doing this because we think this is a necessity. We think that this is a good for humankind. So to be able to get the community approval just makes us want to work 10x harder. And you see that when you see just so many developments on Hive, people just burning the midnight oil because they say, hey, my vote matters. I'm a part of this protocol. We're not working for some company. We're not making some VCs rich that invested in us. The community trusted us with the funds, so anything we do is giving directly back to the community. It's a different mindset, and you definitely work harder. You don't just work to cross the bar. You cross the bar, and you keep moving the bar. So.
I just want to reiterate on you talking about the funding mechanism. Back in the day, like 2.5 years ago, I guess, Voltec, Dan, and myself spent countless hours debating and discussing the morals and ethics behind how you fund these projects. A lot of people, they want to go out, give the tokens to themselves early on, give 10% of those to community members or VC capital, give a few percent to themselves to fund their projects, and it misaligns the incentives with the community. So the community is going to basically be used as exit liquidity by these VC funds, right? Then that gives the government the moral right to regulate the ecosystem because it's an immoral act, ultimately, if you're using unsuspecting people as exit liquidity. So we were looking at Hive and the DHF, and we were just like, hold on a minute here, there's something here. We can drop a miner token to the community based on people's Hive power, which is we already know Hive is decentralized, so we're like, that's a benchmark. We know we're dropping value tokens to a decentralized community that allows them then to actively participate if they wish. They can then sell their larynx tokens, the miner tokens, or they could claim them or not claim them. The ones that don't get claimed, a portion of those go into a DAO for the future for the network. We didn't touch any of the tokens, out of principle, out of making sure it's an ownerless, decentralized service for everyone. And then those tokens can be used to mine the governance token, which everyone starts at 0. And when we realized this, we kind of clicked onto, well, what that does is it creates a truly ownerless network that everyone can participate in, that I talk about this a lot, it instills digital human rights to the users of the chain, right? And it is the very definition of not a security, because people have to earn their tokens. They don't get them. They're not ordained them from the start. So that's a nice thing to say, but then it's like, well, how do you get the funding, you know? You can't just magic the funding out of thin air. Well, kind of, I guess. But so that's when we started working, well, how can we make a proposal for Hive? This service of the Speak Network is for everyone. It's for the community. We do not benefit any more than anyone else does, right? There's people on Speak Network that have got way more tokens than me. They've never worked on it, right? And I think that's the same for most of us. The whole point is that because it's a decentralized service, because it's a service that everyone we think on Hive needs, so that we can incentivize infrastructure operation and help all the apps on Hive, as a bare minimum, integrate video technology, but integrate all sorts of other types of services, which, I mean, these guys are building some amazing future potential stuff. Then it's a service for the entire community, which justifies, in our opinion, a DHF fund, a Hive DAO fund. So we worked a lot with the community. We spoke to a lot of stakeholders. We spoke to a lot of people and asked them, have your input early on, input to the process early on, so that you can get this built in the way that you want it built. And we tried to incorporate that as much as possible. And when the proposal went out, we got funded. And so, I mean, that in itself, I think, deserves a round of applause. Why? Because it's a precedent. It's a precedent in the industry. You don't need to use... If you're building a layer that is going to instill human rights to everybody, and it's, you know, treating everyone equal, then you don't need an ICO to fund that layer. This Speak Network proves that model. You can provide value to a decentralized community and a decentralized DAO, and as long as you're providing value that they like, they'll return the value back, value for value, with funding. And then you can drop tokens, and you don't need to give yourself tokens. So we kind of spent a long time figuring that out, and I'm really proud that we managed to do that. I think it's really, really cool.
And I think it's important to realize that the Speak Network is just a philosophy in terms of how do you scale a blockchain? How do you make it work in practice? We all know that everything can't go on chain. One of the biggest critiques that people have is, oh, how do you build social media whenever, you know, how are you going to handle the scaling? So it's evident that off-chain storage is key. IPFS is the front runner. Voltec himself has helped, you know, really upgrade the entire protocol. And we believe that the majority of data is going to go off-chain, and we are of the philosophy that it must be incentivized. If you don't incentivize it, you don't have censorship resistance. So it just so happens that Hive is really the perfect machine for this. You store text on it, you can reference it, you can now prove who is storing, because that's the key thing, proof of access, to be able to prove who is storing it off-chain and be able to reward them. And it has to be frictionless. It can't cost a lot of money. So Hive is literally the perfect mechanism. You couldn't really do it another way. You have to have the fast feeless transfers, and you also have to have the long form immutable text storage for reference. From there, you can create powerful tools to now incentivize anything you can think of. It went from video, but now it can be smart contracts. It can be large form data, images, you name it, computational. What we're going to do with Ragnarok, you're going to hear a lot of things that are being built with this philosophy, where it's like, hey, how do I decentralize my infrastructure? How do I make it to where if I walk away, they're not relying on my servers, my data? Because I can't store everything on the blockchain. So that means it needs to be stored somewhere. That means I have to store it or convince other people to store it. And the only way to do that is to have a nice incentive system. So I hope really people see the philosophy, and it kind of gives Hive more of an identity of, okay, we understand it's a truth layer, something that you put very, very hardcore data on that you don't want tampered with. And then we start to have off-chain apps that are more friendly. Oh, you know, my LOL, I say jokingly, doesn't need to echo through eternity. I can post that off-chain, and maybe I delete something. Maybe I have a drunken post. You know, some people are kind of scared what they put on chain. So I think the vast majority of people want censorship resistance, but they want control over their data, meaning they can delete it if they want to. So that's sort of the philosophy. I think it makes a lot of sense, and people have, you know, resonated with that.
So I want to bring these gentlemen in. We came across disregard fiat because we had a problem with a previous partner that we were working with, and they couldn't finish the scope of work during the airdrop for the Larynx token. And we were in a really difficult situation, right? It was like, oh my gosh, we've promised that there's going to be a release date of this date. We realized we're not going to make it. And for some reason, I don't know why, maybe you can explain, but you were turning up to our meetings and you were just kind of around. And then this crazy situation happened and you just go, I can do that for you. We're like, whoa, savior from some serendipitous place, I don't know.
Yeah, I think Dan invited me to the meetings because I don't think you guys know what developers do, and you guys are like, oh, we have developer work to do, not understanding that we each have our own skill set. And I don't remember exactly what it was that somebody asked me to do, but I was like, I'm always on my computer, so I was just sitting in on your meetings anyway. But whatever you asked me to do was something about front end, and I was like, I've never touched that stack before. I'm sorry, I can't do that. But yeah, I was in the meeting, and you guys were like, this isn't going to work. And I was like, why don't we just keep it on Hive and make it work with the honeycomb system I have?
Yes, obviously with the honeycomb system, running our airdrop, it was amazing. I think, how long did it take you to build it? About 3-4 weeks or something?
I was mostly done with it in 2 weeks, but it took another 2 weeks to make sure everything was working right.
Yeah. I mean, absolute savior. So that was really, really cool for us. We were like, wow, how lucky. And then on the other side, Nathan Sen came up around January this year, because we were really struggling to get the final pieces of proof of access into place. Proof of access, which is the algorithm that Dan just described, where you get rewarded for storing other people's content. And we were close, but we just couldn't quite get there, and it was kind of stagnating. And Vaultec is super busy on loads of things already. You were super busy on the token system, and it was just like, oh, what are we going to do? We've got to go. What are we going to do? You know? And then again, the same thing. You turned up out of nowhere. You were already interested in what we were doing.
Yeah, so before I ever met Dan or Starkers, I had thought a lot about doing decentralized storage. It was something that I had really spent a lot of time researching and working on different things, but I never really found the right platform or blockchain to launch it on because, like they said, you need the feeless transfers, you need the governance system. And whenever I got on Hive and started really learning a lot about Hive, it's like this is the perfect platform to do something like this on. And then I seen that they were doing the airdrop for a Larynx token, so I started claiming, and then I would buy up what was like liquid on the market when I could. And so I'm actually co-founder of dBuzz, and we were approached about integrating the Speak network into dBuzz using light accounts. So I started joining some of the 3Speak meetings and just listened to the discussions, and the idea of proof of access came up and how it should be done. And so like already having done a lot of research into this and like thinking about like ways that it could be done, I proposed a system and then built a very simple demo to demo it, and that's when Dan and Starkers asked me to come on the team and put a system in place that we could actually pay out rewards and reward people for storing videos. So we launched that in the 3Speak app, I guess a little over a month ago. And so we went from basically no one pinning the videos on 3Speak to having over, I think at the peak there was like 75 or 80 nodes that were pinning up to 100 plus videos each and paying out rewards to those. So just with a few hundred Hive per month, we already have, like I was looking last night, there was some nodes pinning over 500 videos. And I think right now we have like 65 nodes running that are all pinning videos. So.
Yeah, and I don't want to understate this. There's a couple of things here. The first is that the lesson that I drew from these guys coming and getting involved kind of almost spontaneously is that when you drop value to a community, to a decentralized community, you've just given yourself a bunch of stakeholders. You've given yourself a bunch of interested parties, right? Some of them might not be interested, some of them might be. But by gosh, on the Speak network, some of the node operators that we have, they're the best node operators in the world, And Dan and I aren't even devs, And we've managed to distribute a system to people where some of the top class infrastructure operators on Hive are interested, they're vested, They want to know what's going on. They're trying their best and often struggling and helping to fix bugs, but they're operating the infrastructure, you know. And then you get guys like Nathan show up. He sees, oh, what's this? I've got stake here. Can I look? What is this? And then he finds out it's exactly what he needed to build, but it's not built yet. So now he's like, well, can I contribute to it? So instead of us having to scour the world for developers, you know, find people that don't suit or don't match, people like Nathan show up. And it was really funny because everyone's got their own skill sets, you know. And we were all racking our brains on how to do this proof of access thing. We knew what it was like, but to actually get it fixed was like a real problem. And we hadn't focused on it, and there was a lot of other things going on. Nathan shows up, 3 days. There it is, guys. We're just like, what? Where did this guy come from? And it obviously, the whole system didn't take 3 days. It took about 6 months to get rid of all the bugs and everything. But the actual principal core was 3 or 4 days, and it was just like, that's how it works, guys. And we're like, and everyone was like, oh my gosh. How didn't we see this, you know? But that's what you need. You need lots of different smart people working on it. So just amazing. And the lesson I take from this is you've got to drop value on a fair, equal basis to decentralized communities. You just gain so much. You gain so much. And because no one's doing this, everyone's doing ICOs, it's all you get is like VCs hanging around, right? Whereas when you drop value to decentralized communities, you vest legitimate interested parties and talented developers that will voluntarily come in and start working with you. And that's one of the lessons from Speak Network, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've seen the best devs. They always want to work on something pure, something cutting edge, that is something that they say they find very interesting. And the moment you have to, you know, have a VC chain, you know, go out and hire their validators, it's not really a community. So we've noticed that if you drop value fairly and you're building something that is going to help the entire ecosystem, you get amazing developers that you couldn't even dream of trying to hire, but they come voluntarily, and you know they burn the midnight oil. And so this is just a testament of how you spread censorship resistance. You know, if you're looking to build, you know, this isn't an app. This is a fundamental extension of the protocol that no one's really going to benefit from. There's no company, there's no one taking a cut. So it takes a group of volunteers and decentralized funding to make that work in practice. And now we've, you know, proven the model to the most part, and now people can copy and say, hey, well, you know, Hive could use this, and maybe there's another extension here that we can do that benefits everybody as a whole. That's the building blocks. And you know, it's a painstaking way. We have to get there. We have to be sustainable. We have to think of all the pain points. And Speak Network covers this a little bit with the decentralized exchanges. We know we rely a lot on centralized exchanges. You really have to take a macro look, and you can't put your head in the sand. You have to see the real problems and face them head on and come up with practical ideas and say, well, if no one's going to benefit from this individually, right, but as a community, then we need to come together, find the problems, find the resources, and get them done.
Sure. So I want to get some more input from you guys. Before we go into the proof of access side, which I think is probably the most interesting part, there's a whole other side to this Speak Network that Vultec did a lot of work on. So you've got the off-chain accounts, the off-chain indexer, the union indexer. Do you want to give the audience a little bit of an understanding of what that is and the potential of what that can do in the future?
Yeah, sure. So the Union Indexer is a new and improved indexer system on top of Hive that kind of acts as a layer that just takes all of the information from the Hive APIs and turns it into something that applications can really use in production. So we have kind of this problem that if we want to display any data from Hive, we have to either fetch a lot of information and then filter through it, or we just have a lot of information that's just missing entirely. So what it does is it turns all of the data from your normal post feeds and everything like that and puts it into a normal database and feeds it through GraphQL, where an application can really create custom feeds, use different filters, and fetch whatever data is necessary. So in the case of like Dbuzz that's currently working on the integration, they've already had massive speed improvements of just using Union Indexer because they don't have to do hundreds and hundreds of API calls. You're only getting one call, you're getting a whole feed, and it has everything just aggregated for you. It also allows us to combine different feeds from other places. Since we're not just limited to the Hive APIs, we can actually pull in the off-chain data that we're working with so that you can log in with your Ethereum account and post off-chain, and now it's in the same feed as any other Hive account. And of course, you can customize that. So if you want to change how you want to filter, or the trending could be done via like comments versus Hive rewards, that's all within the actual API provided.
Have you actually posted with an Ethereum account yet?
I have on the off-chain indexer. Yeah. So I think we also did, I think like a year or so ago, we did a public page where people could go in and post off-chain.
Yeah.
Which I think we actually got a lot of people. I've been looking through all of the different accounts and stuff, and there's been quite a lot of people who have actually tested that out, at least on the Hive side, where they log in and post. And
because it's been an interesting thing because we've really had this technology for a long time, but the process of getting it integrated into an app, which Dbuzz has done an amazing job, and it's really cool because Dbuzz is a short form content platform, so it's an obvious fit in my opinion to put this in there. And I don't know how close you guys are. Is it?
Very close.
Very close. This is very close to having Ethereum accounts post to Dbuzz.
I would say we're like 95%.
Yeah. So it's going to be super cool. So this is going to give us as the Hive community the ability to reach out to the Ethereum community and say, hey, you guys can post. There's a front end here. It's Ethereum enabled. Yeah. As far as I'm aware, we're going to have Ethereum domain names.
That is something we need to add, but yeah, that's later.
It's possible.
Later months. Yeah.
So I mean, this is such cool technology, because then you start to think about, well, now we can start to look at either dropping tokens to Ethereum community members or specific portions of Ethereum communities, or you can look at like, how do you reach out to these chains and bring them in? Are there any governance issues they're having on the current token setup and governance that could be solved by a different drop? And then the other side of this as well is we've built breakaway communities, which are it's a fork of Xency, and Xency has got a community section, so you can put a community front page with the Union Indexer integrated, so you can have off-chain and on-chain content on these communities. You can tokenize those communities. So now Hive's going to be able to go out to all these different chains with the cross-posting capability and drop value to these chains. And I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but as a minimum, where is he? A Nomad Soul, is he here? A Nomad Soul did a great video the other day, it was cut by Noah Miller, and it was like 30 seconds long, and he was like, Hive's going to be the place where all these other blockchains see that they can guarantee their communication capabilities. And that's what this is going to do. It's going to incentivize them to come across and post. They're going to get value just because they're part of a community, and they're going to have their own front ends that they can post to that can't be shut down, you know? And this, I think, is going to be very, very important going forward, and it's part of the key core capability of the Speak network. And again, because of what these guys have built, the infrastructure behind that is going to be run by the community itself. There's no centralized entity running the infrastructure. They run it themselves, you know? So it's complete sovereignty for communities, basically. So,
yeah, and additionally, all the off-chain stuff is decentralized as well. It's on IPFS and using Ceramic. And I think we might be one of the only platforms out there that has an open source indexer for the Ceramic off-chain data. Mm-hmm. You look at the other solutions like Orbis, they all are closed source, you know, proprietary standards, no information about them, but yet they are kind of decentralized. So one of the only ones that actually does have an indexer with real standards that are published in that source code that show that you can run your own indexer and pin the same content that is on IPFS and index the same data that we all have posted off-chain.
And as far as I'm aware as well, this is the only way to be rewarded for storing content on IPFS. Is that correct?
Well, for the proof of access stuff,
yeah.
All of the stuff that's like the off-chain is kind of different, but
He likes it. So, can I bring Disregard in? Can you give a summary of what your side of this is? I know you've done a lot of work on the tokenomics of this with Honeycomb, and how Honeycomb integrates into this.
So yeah, this is running on a fork. This is running on a fork of Honeycomb, and it's a lot different than what we normally offer in terms of its features and functionality. If you look over here, you can see that there's a Speak token, a Larynx token, a Broca token, and there's this, of course, governance associated with that. There's polling and making sure that the rollups, you can actually test and verify the validation of the proof of access part of the system. So there's part of the stuff that I've mostly been working on in terms of this is like the governance model. How do we make sure that we can vote? How do we keep it inside of the state machine that is Honeycomb instead of just blowing up everything in terms of like a normal blockchain, how that would scale. So this scales much closer to how many users we have, not the length of time that the network has been operating. We had to install a new DEX, and that's almost done. But hopefully, with all of the improvements that we've made to our UI, this UI, these things will all come together that allows us to, as a community, vote on the fundamentals of the ecosystem, such as like power down time, how much collateral limits we need, how many validators we have, how much of the videos we want to verify every day. These kinds of things will be part of the governance model. So this has been a lot of work to flesh out, as well as I think the hardest part of this was making sure that there was a way to opt out of something that you find objectionable or immoral as far as what kind of content you're storing. And so we had to get a whole new way to like ensure that there's a three-party transaction between somebody like a 3Speak who wants to pay to store your video, and for you to be able to upload it to a validator or somebody who's running that infrastructure, and make sure that we can prove the provenance and integrity of those files all the way through this ecosystem. So it's been a lot of work, but it's really coming together now.
Yeah, it's really cool. I'm really excited to see all that come out. What else we got? Are you going to do a presentation about proof of access separately? Do you want to touch on it here, or?
I mean, I think in my presentation I'll go over more the technical side of stuff and just kind of explain it a little bit more. But if you have any questions you want to ask me now about it.
I'll be interested to know.
I want to give a huge shout out to this guy, because the way that the network first started, we were going to be probably running through like 3 to 18 times the ecosystem's worth of files in bandwidth just to prove the access. And he rolls around, and now it's just negligible. Now, it doesn't even matter what we store now. It's just like, oh, it's a file, we can verify it. It's amazing.
I appreciate it.
So, can you give us your experience over the last, what is it now, 9 months of working on this?
Yeah,
it's been a bit of a roller coaster,
it's been quite the project. And the thing is, and all the 3Speak meetings happen at 4 a.m. in the Philippines, so it's kind of been it's been a great. I mean, I usually work nights anyway, but I think that originally whenever I looked at it, I was like, this is going to be super easy, and then like the requirements just like continue to roll in, and so we had to do all the synchronization with the nodes and the communications, and we tried to do it solely over using IPFS PubSub, and then we ran into the issues there, so we ended up switching and using WebSockets, which we can use PubSub or WebSockets now. We have both functionality there. But yeah, it's been quite a adventure, and I'm glad to see we got something up and running and people storing files, and just like it seemed like almost overnight, we had 60, 70 people running nodes after we announced it and put it online.
This is Hive, you can only get this on Hive. You drop a bit of value, you put it out there, and you get 60 people show up running nodes for you.
I was telling them, there's billion-dollar networks out right now that don't have 60 or 70 validators or node operators right now running. Yeah. So it is quite amazing to see the community support that we have.
To go into a little bit of detail about what Nathan's built, he's basically released a no-frills initial contract that just allows you to go into our desktop app and say, hey, store the last 2,000 videos on 3Speak, right? And I've got X amount of terabytes hopefully, but gigabytes spare on my laptop. And people all over the world are just going click, click, and it just starts downloading the last 2,000 videos. And then they randomly get pinged by the proof. And if they provide the proof back, we're funding a Hive wallet that sends them Hive. So at the moment, it's not Speak Network tokens that are being distributed, but it's a basic model that proves that this is running and people are running it. And then Disregard's portion of this is to basically allow people to take that even further, where you can customize the contracts. So instead of it just being, I'm going to pay Hive for the last 2,000 videos, it's going to be basically whatever you want. So it's like, I want to store this last 5,000 videos, or I want to store any video that comes in this time period, or I want to store any video that comes in from this platform maybe. And I want to pay this much for it. I want this many backups. We're going to base it on 3 backups. So when you pay money into the Speak Network, the community is going to back up your files. So if you disappear as an entity, your files are still backed up 2, 3, 4, 5 times, depending on how much you've been paying in, depending on how you've put together the contract that Disregard's building. So that's the next step for this now. And it's super exciting. I'm really... Would you say there's anything else to add to what I just said there?
Right, because right now we're proving out the proof of access system, and effectively it's a centralized system where 3Speak is saying, hey, we're going to prove the proof of access system, we're going to pay you to store videos. What the Speak Network is going to do is allow anybody to store anything they want, and the community will be able to, run with that. So the Speak Network is going to talk to the validators, which are running the proof of access system. So we're going to pull in basically 20 copies of what he does to make sure that everything is decentralized in the future. So it's all coming together. And
when Disregard says anyone can store anything, I mean, this isn't just individual users like you guys and us. This is platforms. We can be approaching platforms now and saying, hey, do you want to back your storage up in a decentralized community, right? Where's your storage run now? With an S3 server that can be shut down? Well, why do you want to back some stuff up? Here's a contract, you can write the contract, you can fund the contracts, and then the community can voluntarily, and maybe it's not our community, maybe it's their community that comes and starts pinning these videos to IPFS and starts getting rewarded for them. So the key is, it's not just users, it's platforms, it's businesses, it's NFT platforms, it's image servers, photographers, podcasts, right? So there's all sorts of different people we can approach that will benefit from this, as opposed to just individual video content creators, let's say. I want to move on to where this is going, according to you guys, and you as well, Dan. Is there anything on this part that you want to comment a little bit further?
So right now we have the proof of access running, and me and Disregard are going to be working together over the coming weeks to integrate Honeycomb and the proof of access together. Like he was saying, there's going to be 20 validators that are running the proof of access, and then anyone can run a storage node. And through the Honeycomb system, the validators will be elected. And then those validators will run algorithms to determine what videos they need to prove are being stored. And then they run those proofs and then mark those as valid or invalid, depending on whether or not someone's storing the files that they claim they are. And then the Honeycomb system will begin rewarding them with the SPK token. And I think we're very close to having a fully functional testnet to launch.
Right.
Any thoughts for you on this section, Dan?
No, we can move to the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I've heard different things from these guys, all three of them talking about where this is going. Sorry, did you just say something? Sorry.
Yeah, and on my end, rolling out 3Speak 2.0. So all refactored. As Matt was saying, 3Speak was made about 4 years ago, and it needs a lot of updates, both in terms of UI and all the technicals. So over the next few months, rolling out 3Speak 2.0, which is all new UX, login flow completely redone, upload everything across pretty much everything in the UI is going to be changed. And that'll also allow us to do new features like private content and like Patreon type things, subscriptions, and other more primary features that people will come and join 3Speak on and start using, along with probably, let me think here, more on like CDNs, since we really haven't worked a lot on the CDN technology. So really heavily pushing on building the CDN nodes and getting that out where anyone can run a CDN node and it automatically does the indexing, it does the routing, and any kind of like lightning channel type payments where as a user, I hook up to a CDN and I start lightning some kind of channel where I'm paying 0.001 Hive for every minute watched of a video. To then reward those actual nodes for surfing that content.
Yeah, just that's reminded me. I mean, we focused a lot on the proof of access storage because it's like the most interesting part, let's say. But Vaultec he's done so much work on this. He's also built a what would we call it? A decentralized encoder node system, an encoder cluster system. So most of 3Speak's videos go through this cluster. They don't go through our own, they're not all going through our server now. They go through this cluster of people that come together to run their own encoders for us. So our encoders are already decentralized, and they operate in clusters. So the system's built in a way that works out the load of the system, whether the video's coming through is very big and heavy, and if it needs to go to the heaviest duty encoder in the cluster, or if it's a lightweight video and it can go to the lightest weight encoder in the cluster. Anyone can get involved in this. Anyone can copy what we've done and run their own encoder cluster for their own platforms. And the tech's all built, it's all open source and out there. So we've pretty much got the encoder system decentralized. The proof of access system is almost ready for release, as we just mentioned with the testnet. So like Vaultec was saying there, the next piece of the puzzle is focusing on the CDN and delivering the content. But that's kind of, based on the work that you've done on the encoders so far, it's kind of a natural next step, isn't it, for the CDN to finish?
Yeah, well, there's some more on the encoders themselves. Obviously, some main improvements to fix bugs and other issues. But the real important thing with new version of 3Speak is instant uploads. So as soon as your video is uploaded to our site, it's live. As long as that video is like an MP4 that we can actually play, you'll see your video live. So no need to wait for 20, 30 minutes, sometimes longer to encode, and we'll actually encode that video in the background and then update that data on chain once it's done. So being able to actually go in and just plop your video in there and hit upload, and once it's done on your end, then your video is posted.
Cool. I mean, that's going to be super good. I'm not sure how. Does anyone here? Has anyone uploaded to 3Speak here? You know that encoder process, baby. It's really. It's like waiting at a dentist sometimes. But this is really going to fix that, and yeah, I just can't wait. It's going to solve so many. I mean, we get so many complaints, you know, but with this, they go.
Faster than YouTube.
Faster than YouTube. Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure. Some people have said it's already faster than YouTube on at least upload, but you know, we'll see.
Amazing, amazing. So let's move to the future part of this. I spoke to you a couple of weeks ago in Las Olas, and you were talking about AI development using this network.
Oh yeah. So one of the things I want to do, like he working on unit indexers and stuff like this. It would be really nice if, you know, AI is the future apparently. Hopefully. So anyway, it would be really cool if I have a certain algorithm that, you know, I'm responsible for. Just like anybody else who's an influencer and they're like, hey, I have a certain kind of makeup that's great. What if I have an algorithm that says like, hey, these are the greatest content or makers in the world or whatever, and you would be able to subscribe to that. And I would be able to run it on my computer whenever I'm there, but anybody else, I can always index and look at it and stuff like this. So I could have an algorithm, 3Speak can have an algorithm, you know, the Mormon Church could have an algorithm. It doesn't really matter, but you would be able to subscribe to these different algorithms, keep them in a decentralized storage, and start to own them. So maybe I was a Mormon, and I really liked that algorithm, but now I'm going to switch religions, and I can just slowly change my very own personal algorithm and store it on this decentralized platform. Mm-hmm. So it would be, you know, you get to own a lot more than you do now, and that's kind of what we will all want, I hope. Is a world that we own.
Yeah,
So-
like even just starting with like some basic tags, like I want to have these tags today, or maybe I have some tracking thing that says I've watched all of these gaming videos today, and now it's recommending more gaming videos, and then we could see, like the user can actually see like, oh, it's recommending me this because I've looked at content with this tag. Could go a very long way in actually creating both transparency in what you're viewing. In the recommendations, but then also like you're still getting stuff that you care about, and it's not just like new feed and then trending, which is all top voted stuff, not really all that relevant. And of course, you can control it ultimately.
So for the layman, this effectively means to me, I mean, we all kind of despise, love, and hate the YouTube algorithm, right? It feeds us this stuff. It's not based on necessarily what's good for us. It's based on what we are addicted to. Right? There's no access to the algorithm. It's run by someone up there, and there's not much we can do about it apart from keep consuming YouTube videos like we do, as Brian of London is right now. No. So the hope is with this that what it sounds like to me, correct me if I'm wrong, you're talking about decentralizing the YouTube algorithm here and other trending feed algorithms and running them from the Speak network, and then being able to copy other people's algorithms and put them on your own nodes and run them for yourself. So you're starting to put more control into your own hands here, and it's run on a decentralized ecosystem that cannot be shut down, has no owner and no controller but you, right? And then you can share what you do to other people, and other people can copy what you've done. And so there's going to be more sovereignty in the algorithms that we consume. And then the next step would be then other apps can integrate this. ActiveFit has already started integrating. XSense has already started integrating. And what do they benefit? They don't have to do any of this work. It's all done for them, right? They just have to integrate the APIs, work with us as we mature. But it means other apps are then going to be able to allow their users that install this technology to customize their own trending algorithms and not run it from their own centralized servers. They'll be able to run it from the Speak Network servers, which are decentralized. So massive step forward in my opinion.
Yeah, I think we should touch on the Bitcoin wrapping and swapping as well.
Forgot about that. That's
Maybe
also going on.
Voltec wants to talk about that.
Maybe Vault.
Yeah. So with the Bitcoin wrapping that we're working on right now, is
Sorry, can I just give some context here
Yeah,
for a
yeah,
second? So Dan and I really we like to go to disaster scenarios for Hive in our minds, not in real life. But we like to go there because it's like, well, what if Hive gets delisted from all these exchanges? We are truly a decentralized ecosystem. So how do we get back on these exchanges? What's going to happen if we class as a security by the system and it deletes us, right? And it tries to, which it feels a little bit like that's happening right now. Well, one of the key things is to be able to have a decentralized bridge to get back to Bitcoin without an exchange, right? There's bridges on Hive already, they're amazing, but we genuinely feel that if this becomes successful, those bridges they will be attacked, you know? Maybe they won't be, maybe we're wrong, but we're kind of hyper doomsday scenario, right? So we've talked for a long time about building a decentralized bridge, and Voltec being Voltec has like listened to us moaning about this in the meetings or something, and he's gone, you know what, I think I can do this, and he's gone and done a ton of research. I think it started about 6 months ago you started looking into this, and you've come up with what you feel is the best way to do a decentralized bridge. So in the next near future, we will have, touch wood, I don't want to say will, we should have a decentralized bridge to Bitcoin, which Dan and I have helped put together and Voltec's done the work for. And so I'm really looking forward to that. I don't know if it's worth a round of applause, but I really think it is, personally. It really protects Hive, for sure. So how does that work then?
well, I'm going to assume most people kind of already have an idea, so I'm not going to go too much into it. But essentially, you have wrapping providers that are collateralized. So they're collateralized on the Hive side. They hold 2 times the amount of collateral that they expect to hold in Bitcoin. And that means that they're over-collateralized. So if there is any kind of price deviation of Bitcoin that they're holding, there is still collateral there. And that collateral is used to punish them if they steal user funds and pay those users back if any of those funds are lost. So essentially, the user would deposit their Bitcoin onto these providers, which there could be many of these different providers. You could choose from whichever one you'd want, preferably the ones with the most collateral, since you don't really want to go to the ones that are already saturated, and those will be the people who will most likely withdraw. But you would send them your Bitcoin, and then they would effectively post a proof that they have received it on-chain, and then it allows that user to actually mint wrapped Bitcoin. That's one-to-one with the on-chain Bitcoin. And when the user wants to go ahead and withdraw that, they would send a request, and the chain, essentially the contract would say that this provider has to unwrap and send Bitcoin to that user. And if they do not, within some period of time, like 24 or 48 hours, then their collateral gets slashed in accordance to the amount of Bitcoin that they hold. So even if they steal funds, that user is still going to get the collateral, the equivalent value of what they've lost, and it ensures that no wrapping provider will want to commit fraud, and ensuring that it's also decentralized and fully trustless, largely.
And the collateral is held in multi-sig wallets, right?
Yeah, so the collateral is held on the Hive side in a multi-sig, which then works through the smart contracts on VSE and then handles that whole process. And from a user, what you'd essentially be doing is you deposit your Hive to that multi-sig. You'd go through whatever DEX is that exists for this, and trade that deposited Hive balance against an internal DEX, which then allows you to get wrapped Bitcoin and then ultimately redeem that Bitcoin for real on-chain balance. So then you could take that Bitcoin and send it to whatever exchange you want or other DEX within Bitcoin land. And so that allows Hive to have a direct route that's fully decentralized to Bitcoin for trading.
So any thoughts on the future of this? Well, let's just move to Nathan. Any thoughts on the future of this from you?
Yeah, I'm super interested in this. We've discussed a lot about how it could be done, and Vaultec has this solution, and I'm looking forward to possibly working with him in the future on developing this technology. We're trying to wrap up the proof of access and get the testnet out for Honeycomb. And then at that point, I'm like super. I think that this technology of being able to trade your Hive into Bitcoin in a decentralized manner without having to go through a centralized exchange that have proven themselves to be fraudulent over and over the past few years. I mean, what happened with FTX last year is like a perfect example of like why exchanges are not our friends. And the same thing with Bittrex and Binance with the hostile takeover of Hive. We've seen that we can't trust these guys, and we need some kind of decentralized solution in place, and even being able to add other coins in, so like Monero or Ethereum. Would love to see bridges there as well. So yeah, I'm super interested and excited for what's coming.
Yeah, and this can easily be integrated with other Bitcoin similar chains, so like Litecoin, Dogecoin, and once we make an EVM variant of this, we could also target all the EVM chains in the same kind of manner.
Super cool. Any thoughts for the future on this, apart from those from you, Vaultec?
Like, are you asking more from timeline or what?
Where you think it could go? What you're interested? You're obviously working with the tech quite closely. Where do you think this is going for you? What do you think we're going to be doing with it in 2 years? Without making any promises, of course, but
yeah. 2 years. What I really look forward to is making all of the payment for services on Hive and other dApps automated. You can have an address on Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, and you can just deposit to it. And the entire system handles the exchange, the conversion to Hive, so you can just easily accept payments from all of these different chains and go through the bridge as the primary means for exchange. So you can program whatever kind of application you need, and you can completely cut out the payment processing end of it, and you just receive Hive at the end of the day, or whatever your token of choice is.
And then for Speak Network, cause I mean, your kind of your background is you're a hardcore video dude. You were building video technology for years so far. So how's that going to help you, and what are you looking forward to in terms of the changes it's going to make to the video infrastructure?
Yeah, I mean, really making 3Speak very decentralized, having everyone running CDN infrastructure, storage, everything under the sun regarding that, and also making 3Speak itself a really good product. So built on top of all of this decentralized technology, and making 3Speak a very good entry point to the decentralized ecosystem. So not just having these technologies powering it, but also really good feature set, like having like Patreon-style monetization, subscriptions, special kind of promotions on the site itself, like you subscribe to 3Speak and you say, all right, I want to pay 3Speak $5, and now I get some special badge, and really like making 3Speak, trying to make 3Speak target those same kind of things that Web2 companies and projects already aggressively target, but also decentralized while we're doing that.
Cheers. You had something to say?
Sure. I also think that because of the way that the 3Speak or the Speak network is going to be electing validators, there's a mechanism in the Speak network so that any account can say that I'm running a certain service. For instance, like a 3Speak mirror, so that you can get videos if their platform gets shut down, or a deluxe mirror, or a turn server so you can do live streaming. And because the validators themselves are voted in to get their rewards based on the community, I think that's a way for people to say, like, oh, I'm going to run a turn server so that we can do live streaming in a decentralized manner, and the people who provide that will be getting paid because, well, we're going to vote for them, right? So I really feel like this is the first step, just having the network data layer, and then right on top of it, we're going to put even more services. So I think as soon as this is done, that everything about the system could just blow up. There is no use case we can't use if it has a computer right now. It's crazy.
Yeah. The other thing here as well is, like, our slogan's always been incentivizing Web3 infrastructure operators. That's really what Speak Network does. It's almost, maybe I'm wrong here saying this, but I feel like it's essentially a replacement to Amazon Web Services for video. It effectively provides that service, right? But it's decentralized. And so then you start to go, well, with the storage and the proof of access system, it's basically a work done. You're proving that you've got access, so there's like a kind of binary moment where it's like, this is proof that we've got this video. You can be rewarded for that. It's very hard to gain, if not impossible, hopefully. But the CDN side, it's like a throughput thing, and you can kind of gain throughput. So CDN is going to have some kind of subscription or payment model, so those guys can get rewarded. And then the encoder is a similar thing as well. It's like a throughput thing. So you can't do a proof of work on that, as it were, right? But you can monetize those nodes based on either reputation, subscriptions, case-by-case payments, things like that. So that's what Speak Network incentivizes in terms of the infrastructure. But we've got these guys in the middle that Disregard just mentioned, which is the validators, and all the content flows through them, and then the storage nodes go to those guys and grabs the content off them and pins them to their local nodes. So they're really key pillars of the ecosystem, and they're very, very important members of the community. So they will be elected in by the ecosystem. Well, I think what's going to happen with those guys is they're going to be running all sorts of infrastructure, because this is an infrastructure incentivization system. There may be different types of infrastructure that Speak Network cannot directly incentivize, but I'm going to vote for the validator who's running more infrastructure than the other guy. And we'll set up systems to make that transparent so that the validators can demonstrate, hey, I don't just run a node, I run this other Hive-related infrastructure that maybe isn't incentivized by Speak Network, but I'm still running that infrastructure. Well, we want those people elected in, we want them incentivized to be validated on the Speak Network so that we can figure out, at least subsidize what they're doing in some way and try and make a wide range payment out for different infrastructure operation in Hive. And I think that's another interesting application of the Speak Network as well.
I want to clarify, it's like the Hive witnesses, where there is 20, but there's also a really long tail of everybody who's going to be a backup to those. So if you vote for somebody, let's say a vote is worth 1 unit, it's going to be worth 1 unit for that person all the way up until they're in the top 20. As soon as you're in the top 20, whatever that cutoff is, they get 2 times. So it's like just like the Hive witnesses here, everybody gets paid the same roughly if you're doing a top 20 witness and everybody else has a long tail. So it's going to be a lot like that.
Can you just touch on briefly the governance voting system that we built? It was really interesting.
So much like every decentralized system that has governance voting has an apathy problem where, you know, somebody like Justin Sun can just like not vote for witnesses and come by and say, oh, I'm going to vote for all of these witnesses. And the community by itself was apathetic enough that we couldn't stop it in time. Get around that. But so the system we designed here is you get to vote for different parameters of the ecosystem, but if you don't vote for those parameters, you have delegated the top 20 to be those people. So let's say we have 50% apathy, so 50% of the people here actually control. It would be just like the same as going to like the House of Representatives and saying, I have you know, two units in the system, so I have 2 votes. But the top 20 will get the rest. So if the 50% don't vote, each one of those people will get 5% of the rest of that vote. So 2.5%, is that right? I'm not a developer.
Probably. So to me, in layman's terms again, that just means if you don't vote, then the top 20 validators get your vote, right? And if you do vote, the system automatically takes your vote away from the top 20 validators and gives it to your account, which means, in theory, you don't have any dead voting coins. On Hive, on many of these ecosystems, there's a lot of, like Disregard says, a lot of apathy, a lot of people that don't vote or they're not interested or whatever it is. There's a lot of, I think on a typical proof of stake, it's, what is it, like 40, 30% of voting? You know, so you've got this other 70% that's sitting there not doing anything. Now maybe there's like a no vote type thing there. Maybe we can build that in some way. But at the moment, the way it works is if there's that dead 70%, it will go to the top 20 elected validators. So you kind of vote by proxy by electing the validator. What that means as well, because Speak Network's quite complex, there's quite a few variables, although Disregard's done a great job of bringing that number down. But of course, you can't expect every member of the community to understand every variable and vote on every single thing. So what it means is those people that don't have time, they just by default are going, I'm voting for this validator because I know that guy's job is to know what all these variables are and set them themselves, right? And so we think it's, I mean, we'll see if it's more useful than the Hive consensus system, but it's certainly something we want to try out with this, and maybe it gets integrated into Hive later if this is successful. Who knows?
How many variables did you have in the initial light paper?
I think it was like 250.
It's like 10 to 15 now.
It's 10, 15 now. That either means that he's missing 125 variables. But good job bringing them down. Absolute legend. So, any final thoughts? Any closing thoughts from anyone? I'll let you go last, Dan, if you want. Yeah. Disregard? Excited?
Always. Default.
Yep. Excited.
Nathan?
Questions?
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to the future of this, and you know, one of mine and Chris's vision for DBuzz is that one day we're not necessary. It just kind of runs on its own on this decentralized network, and we don't have to run any servers. Everything is decentralized. And I think Dan and Starkers are kind of on the same path for 3Speak. So I'm super excited for the future of that and to get it to that point.
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to, really, this whole setup is about tokenized communities for me. That doesn't just mean having a community with a token. It means giving them the ability to incentivize community infrastructure, be able to earn status entities within each community, so you get social capital, so people literally store things for free just to get status within said community. And I really see that as a powerful way as communities take their sovereignty and they're like, look, we don't have to rely on any centralized infrastructure. We're in control. The content is distributed. It's decentralized. We've created an autonomous way to reward value in a fair way to where we can't be attacked. Well, at least be able to ward off attacks. So I think we are at the cusp of being able to have what you would refer to as digital nations one day. The ability to come together and really be sustainable.
Yep. I think that's it. We'll take some questions. Any questions? We've got a mic system, sorry. Disregard's always like the default mic deliverer.
Right. I just looked at him. What does resistant mean in censorship resistant?
That's a very good. I think I should. You're going to take it. I'd be interested in Dan's comment on it as well because he's always talking about it. Go ahead. Go.
All right, so this comes back to like the morality of actually being capable of storing files you might not agree with. So resistant means that we're going to incentivize 3 different people minimum to store your file. Let's say one of these people is in a place that they don't agree with whatever you posted. I have no idea what it could be. Oh, you just Trump campaign video, and he's like, I'm not going to store this. So that leaves an open spot in the system. So now the remaining 2 people will have more incentives to actually store that file. So instead of getting 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, this person gets what is it, 4/3? Again, I'm not the math person. So it's more than they would have gotten because they're storing that file. Additionally, if other people want to make sure your file is available, they can pay additionally. So instead of just having 3 people here, there will maybe 4, 5, 6 people that'll be storing that file. Then if half of those people drop off, the rest of them will be getting paid double for the normal rate of, it's just like megabytes, right? So hopefully this system will work out for the average like content that is not necessarily legal, but questionable. And then the other half of this is, what if nobody can say that this should be stored? And that's at the point of the validators. And the validators will have to go by and say, like, this content is morally reprehensible, and I'm not going to actually validate this content. So you as the community will be able to say, I'm not going to vote for a validator who will, do a lottery on, say, like CP or just other like ridiculous content. And the community as a whole will decide that this content won't be stored on the ecosystem. That doesn't mean that somebody won't be able to store that file. It just means that it won't be incentivized. And you can obviously not go to that storage provider.
I'll just add, you have immutability, which is Hive, the blockchain. You put it on, you need to get consensus and data forked out, which really hasn't ever happened. So that would be immutability. You know that's going to be there. Censorship resistance is the law of if you pay someone, they will be paid. So if there's incentives, people will show up for those incentives. So it's not immutability. Censorship resistance means it can be deleted. The great thing about censorship resistance is you control. You're incentivizing people to redundantly store your content, but then you can remove those incentives and delete the data. And if you don't incentivize people, it just goes off into the wind. So that's the whole idea, is incentives versus immutability.
Couple more questions. I've got Lord Butterfly. Let's get Brian in London, and Nick's also got his hand up. And then we're going to have to cut it for lunch and come see us.
So to a more tougher question. When it comes to your designated tokens, do you guys have any intention to maybe working on adding more liquidity to the markets, maybe like Splinterlands is doing for their tokens, cool. Liquidity providers, or do you want to just, wait for the demand to do its own thing?
I'll let you go on this because I know you.
Yeah,
I just want to ask for context. Are you familiar with the SIP on Speak Network? Yeah?
A bit.
So we call it a service infrastructure pool, where I'll just give context and then you can come. The SIP is where effectively if you want to mine efficiently in the ecosystem, you have to hold more Larynx miner tokens. The only place you can get Larynx miner tokens is either the open market, or you can go to the SIP and you can buy them from the SIP. It's an autonomous liquidity pool, and you buy them from the SIP, right? But you put liquidity into the SIP, you put money into the SIP in order to get the tokens out. That allows you as a miner to mine more efficiently in the ecosystem, but by default, the system's asking you to give up some of your funds to provide liquidity to the ecosystem, right? So the SIP's this kind of interesting concept where we talked earlier about, the centralized exchanges are making all these fees off our trades. Well, the idea behind the SIP is you're getting the infrastructure operators themselves to back it with their own liquidity in exchange for the ability to mine efficiently, But then that gives the community to receive the rewards that the centralized exchanges are making, because the SIP's it will constantly grow, because there's always going to be money flowing into the SIP. So in theory, the liquidity in the SIP should grow over time to the point where there's enough fees being made from the SIP that it can incentivize the whole ecosystem and keep most of the infrastructure online on its own. That's what the exchange fee should be used for, in our opinion, right? So it technically gives us that ability to do that. The SIP isn't built yet, but that's where we're at behind it. I don't know if you want to add to that.
Oh, that's a great explanation. Basically, it's brute force liquidity. If the system works, it will have liquidity. You put in HBD, you're competing versus the daily auction versus the other people, and you get whatever it ends up being, depending on how many people put in HBD. If you put in 10 HBD and no one else does, you get all of that daily auction. If you're competing versus 10 people, you're slicing it 10 different ways. That HBD is then locked and paired, so the HBD as a whole, 100% is locked. A tiny bit of speak will then be minted and paired into a liquidity pool, and there's no central authority that can come and take that HBD out. So it stays and it grows and grows and grows. It's also going to be staked to where the interest, because the whole idea of the Speak network is not just incentivizations, but brute forcing incentivization as a machine, meaning we don't have to rely on inflation. We can take something like trading fees and recycle that in. The DEX is the heart of any token or coin. It is the way you exchange. So it should be a core intricate part of the system in terms of incentivization. Instead of CZ getting all the fees, they go right back to community. Those fees are then voted on where they go. But to answer your question, if the system is successful, there will be HBD paired with the various tokens.
Thank you.
Brian?
I'll get my question in after.
I'll be brief, because actually I'm not asking a question, I'm answering the last one, but very, very quickly, because they gave a technical answer, but to what is censorship resistance, I'm going to say that almost all media today is advertising paid and advertising supported. And therefore, as soon as you tell the advertisers that something is dangerous, we've entered a world where nothing can get past that. Rumble is currently under pressure because of some British comedian. So what they're creating on this stage, and I'm helping a little bit, is so important, because it's the only one I've seen that's doing it without any reference to advertising, because advertising is censorship. You will always, we have entered into a world now where any pressure on advertisers will work to some extent. And so that will always be able to create censorship.
Fair point. Thanks, Brian. Make sure we get to you in a minute, Nick.
Oh, was there someone else in line? Sorry about that.
Cutting in? I don't know.
So I guess this is probably a question you guys have already considered in your own mind, so I just kind of wanted to ask for an answer on it. So a long time ago, when we set up the image hosters for Hive, at some point we obviously knew we had to decentralize that out, right? And I kind of just put it aside because I knew what you guys were doing in video, and frankly, you're doing solving a much more difficult problem, decentralizing video. But it seems obvious that all the technology you guys have developed for video can be applied the same way to image hosting. So have you guys considered at what point you would be willing to take on that task, and what kind of work is involved?
Yes, I can answer that. So the technology for the proof of access will work just at the same for video as it does for images. And actually, we're working on integrating the proof of access with dbus for storing all of our image files as well. So if that's something that you're interested in, the system is there. It'd probably take 30 minutes to write in a function to pull whatever video or image files that you want, and then start running storage nodes that are storing those in a validator to pay out the rewards for people storing those.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
And then also just a little more on that. Specifically for the image hoster, the CDN part actually will have a section dedicated for image display. So like doing the resizing and other processing that you might want.
Okay, so you've got some image resizing and things like that built in. Great.
Yeah, so it'll help cover that same kind of thing with what the image hoster currently does.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Uraso on Hive, and one of the tasks that I do when I'm not on chain is I help run a digital marketing agency, and as a result of that, I'm in contact with many different people in media. Basically, we focus on Web3, so a lot of that is aiming at people who perhaps are outside of the mainstream, and basically, the bottom line is I know many people who either run communities or would like to run communities, could be companies, could be individuals, who want to have that access to free speech. But one of the barriers that I see right now in this current situation is the technical barrier, whereby even though you have all this amazing technology, there's kind of a limit to what individuals can do or what companies can do to make use of it. So just wondering how you see the future of your project with regards to people being able to easily come and create tokenized communities that are video-based or backed. So in other words, how could somebody come and create their own Web3 version of YouTube for their organization in the real world, and how much time do you think it would take them? Do you guys have a plan to kind of simplify that process?
Anyone want to take that? Or?
Yeah, so right now with breakaway communities, it's just a simple Docker container that you'd set up a server, point your domain to, and then enter in all your details. And that's right now fairly simple. And we have plans to work on other stuff that's a bit more automated, where we're actually acting as maybe a provider, where we have like a domain, you can enter in what name you want, and then start displaying your community.
I mean, to add to that, we already have a couple of communities running. The Skate Hive community has been running. We've got rallyhive.com. Is Slavin in the room? There he is. So they're in their early phases at the moment, but they're effectively XNC forks. And we chose XNC because they're constantly developing, and they're also funded by the Decentralized Hive Fund. We're working closely with their developers it's been very difficult, but we've been working closely with their developers to bring on their updates on a continuous basis. XNC is also, by chance, really, just integrated video technology into XNC, the video technology from 3Speak and the Speak Network. So in the near future, the breakaway communities will be video tubes. And they will have their own tokens. There are examples of them running. So this is happening. I wouldn't say it's the smoothest process yet. It's still in its infancy, but there's been a lot of work being done to make this a few clicks. You know, we did a lot of work over the summer. I don't know if the website's live yet. I'll have to check. I'll find out with you after, but we've built a front end where you basically enter your Hive community, you enter your URL, your server, and your tags that you want to show, and eventually that'll be the union indexer, so what items you want to show on the union indexer. You press go, and you've got a platform, yeah, for free. You don't need any dev time, anything like that. So that's already available. I'll have to check to see where the website is, see if it's up and running. So we're moving that way for sure.
Yeah, we tend to make them so easy that we just give them away to every chain. So every chain has a specific chain front end with a way they can go and mine a proof of brain token, as you will, that then influence the trending on a community level. So these things have to be plug and play. You know, it's easy for me not being a dev, but that's the end goal. Plug and play, tokenized communities. So easy, you can point and airdrop them to whatever communities you want.
I have a good and a bad message. Being the moderator, we are 15 minutes over time.
Yes.
I know that we can talk about this topic probably 2 hours longer.
I'd just like to make one more comment before we close.
I didn't say that I close. I only wanted to remind you a little bit that the food might be getting some other friends, and we only have 30 minutes left to finish the food. So just a friendly reminder from the friendly moderator.
Thanks, Lev. Let's close on this, if we may. I just want to say thank you to the community for helping fund this. It's a decentralized funding effort, and you're really helping fund these guys and their talents and keeping this project going. And it's just an amazing example of how to use decentralized technology and fund something decentralized that provides a service for the whole community. And so, yeah, thanks for funding these guys. Awesome.